Welcome to Whitefields Community Church Sermon Extra. It's great to have you once again with us this week. I'm here with Pastor Nick Cady, who is the pastor of Whitefields Community Church here in Longmont, Colorado. And we have started a new series, and we are in our second week. And last time we were in the book of Amos. If you haven't checked that one out, go to YouTube and you can check that out. But this week we're in the book of Hosea, and it's said to be one of the most beautiful pictures of the gospel and God's heart and God's character towards us. And but before I get to that, we just wanted to, it was kind of a point of speculation when we were looking at this passage, and the speculation comes from chapter 4, verse 14, which kind of talks about Gomer, who the one that Hosea was asked to go and marry. That there was this idea that she could have been a temple prostitute.
Yeah, so the idea of temple prostitute would be different from like how we generally think of it in our day, kind of street walking prostitutes, if you use a kind of term like that. But a temple prostitute it was a way that people worshipped in the pagan temples. And, one of the things we talked about yesterday was why was it that the foreign gods were so alluring to the people of Israel? And we said the reason was because what the foreign gods promised is that basically anything you want, whether that's alluringness or children, money, power, success, whatever you wanted, you could get, because the pagan gods essentially promised you that you could manipulate them in order to get whatever you wanted. And so, whereas the God of Israel, the God of the Bible, he does his own thing, and you get on board with it, right? He's sovereign. That verse in the Psalms, God is in heaven and does whatever he wants. And so there was this allure to it that you could get whatever you wanted, and so they would turn to these things. So one of the ways is like people who wanted, let's say, sex and passion, there were prostitutes, and you could go and make this worship to these pagan gods by having sex with a prostitute. And so the idea that it mentions there, cult prostitutes, has led some people to believe that maybe Gomer wasn't just a street walking prostitute, but she was actually a cult prostitute. And, maybe that adds another level to the whole situation, because remember the problem that this was a picture of, that God said, was that the people had gone into idolatry and had turned away from him. And so that would actually make sense that Hosea would go and get a cult prostitute and then bring her, make her his wife, take her out of that system, give her a new identity, a new name, a new future, all of these things, place his love on her as a picture of what God did with his people, who were an idolatrous people. But also adds a level of another level of defilement, you might say. So not only is she physically defiled, but she's also spiritually defiled. And that is also, you correlate with that with the New Testament, like in Romans 5, where it says that even when we were enemies of God, right? It wasn't just that we were passive or kind of not interested, but we were enemies of God in our sin and our defilement. It was at that time that God showed his love for us by coming to us and dying for us, living for us, dying for us, resurrecting so we could have life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's such an interesting point, just kind of pointing again to the real depravity of man and kind of contrasting that against God's mercy. But then that would also sometimes somebody would argue, hey, but what, was Gomer, was she a victim? Was she a victim in all of this? She could have got out of it, but this was the lifestyle she had to. She was forced into prostitution. What about that argument?
I think it's a good argument. I think it's a very important pushback that's come back, in more recent times in our modern society, where they've said, hey, look at a lot of these women who are involved with, sex trafficking and things like that. A lot of them are victims. It's not like they want this. Even if they choose it, sometimes it's because there's no other way or something like that. Maybe it's poverty. Maybe they get forced into it. And I think that's very possible. I think that we should have compassion on those women. I think it's been a good thing that a lot of our justice system has kind of turned the focus more on those who solicit prostitutes as being the real initiators of the crime. But I think that we can say that wasn't necessarily the case here with Gomer. Whether she got into it first because of a sense of victimhood, maybe, we don't know, but maybe. But we know that for sure in chapter 3, Hosea has given her a home. He's providing for her. He's loving her and taking care of her. He's brought her out of that lifestyle. And she, of her own volition, has gone back into it. And we know that because he says there in verse 3, he purchases her back. And makes her his wife, brings her home. And then he says to her in chapter 3, verse 3, he says, okay, now knock it off, right? Like, stop leaving me and sleeping with other men. Like, and he says, I'm going to be faithful to you, but I want you to be faithful to me too.
Yeah, exactly. And so, now on to kind of the main takeaway that you've kind of the feedback that you've got, that you kind of discussed, you shared, at your community group that you lead. What was the main thrust, the main takeaway that you felt people got from this message?
Yeah, the most feedback I got from a lot of people after the message was this idea that, one of the most powerful things about the story is this idea that Gomer comes out of this lifestyle, then she makes vows, right? Like promises of faithfulness to Hosea. Of course, this all being a picture of us and God, right? And in the same way, how many of us have come out of something, we've been forgiven, we've received grace and salvation, and we've taken vows of faithfulness, fidelity to God, and then, like Gomer, we have broken those vows. We have broken those promises. And I think that for some people, they have this great sense of condemnation that they carry around in them that, well, I fell into that same thing again. And I promised God I would never do it again if he would just forgive me that one time, this one time, just forgive me. And he did forgive me. And then look, here I am again doing it one more time. And we see that with Hosea. It's not a permissiveness that God has towards us. And that we do see that with Hosea. It's not like a permissiveness that Hosea is like, hey, no problem. You just keep going out and sleeping with all these other guys and I'll be cool with it. He's not cool with it. But he has grace for her, and he calls her to something better.
Yes. No, and that was definitely for me as well. Just the idea, God's goal is restoration for us in the end, and in the face of our unfaithfulness, he's just faithful over and over and over again. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from Hosea is that it's God's faithfulness to us. Even when we fall over and over and over again, He's still there to pick us up. And it was a great look into this amazing book. And again, as I said in the beginning, just an amazing picture, probably one of the most powerful pictures of the gospel and one of the most powerful pictures of God's heart and God's love towards you and I. And if you get a chance to read it, go ahead and read the book, but then listen to the sermon from Sunday's message. You will not be disappointed at all. And I just pray that God speaks that amazing love into your life as well. And we look forward to seeing you again. Hey, find us on YouTube, ring the little bell, and you'll get notifications every single time we've got a new episode up. We're up pretty much every week now. And of course on SoundCloud, Facebook or wherever, just kind of follow us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Comment, send us a comment if you or just this is blessing you, just let us know, and we just look forward to seeing you again next week. God bless.